What's up, everybody? Mark here, the vocalist for Kardashev, and Nico, what do you do?
I play guitar in Kardashev.
And much more. And today, we're picking up kind of where we left off. We, not too long ago, maybe like a year ago, did a deep dive into the lyrics of every Kardashev release that has ever been written. We talked concepts, we talked symbolism, we talked about a lot of things that I did not intend to write that people said sounded cool, and I said, of course I meant that. Yeah. That is entirely what I meant in the moment. So we're going to do that today. We're going to start, this is probably going to be a multi-part video because it's a long album. It's a full hour, or longer than that, I think.
No. It's 59:59, and I'm real pissed that somebody knocked a second off.
Shame on them.
Yeah, that person, just know you did me.
You did us wrong. But so we're going to start that today for Liminal RITE, and it's going to be a lot of fun. However, I think that we should commemorate. I was going to say commiserate. Commemorate.
We can commiserate.
No.
It's so hot, dude.
No. Refuse. That's what the OnlyFans is for. What? We should commemorate this by getting back into our old hobby, Magic the Gathering. And I don't know if you know this, but I brought a booster pack to open to celebrate.
Okay, I knew he had that in there, but he also knew that mine was right here.
And that, my friends, is how you ruin a bit.
What?
Let's open these up. Let's see what we get.
Okay, let's see what happens. I mean, people with one hand got to do it somehow, right?
It's true.
Hold on. I know how they do it.
Use the snippers.
I know how they do it. Wait. I'm sorry if you guys can... This is about to be an ASMR MTG opening party.
Don't do it.
It's so slippery, you know?
Do you need my help?
Yeah. My mouth was on that.
Oh, I know. It's just a little...
It's a little slimy.
Yep.
I haven't brushed my teeth in like a week, so...
That's good.
It probably smells good too. Yo, Magic cards smell different now.
They do.
For those of you who who've never or who haven't played in a long time, they do not smell the same. Thank you, you're a peach.
Ugh.
All right. Oh, apparently this is the front now. Okay, here we go.
We probably shouldn't read every card, so let's just like slide through and see what we get.
Look how, it's not gonna focus, but look at the colors on this. It's beautiful.
Oh, that's kind of cool.
All right. You get to read 2 and I get to read 2.
Okay. Planes. Just kidding.
Okay, mine's Refine's Guidance. It's an white aura for 1. Enchant creature gets +1/+1, and you may cast it from your graveyard by paying 3 rather than its mana cost.
Oh.
That's pretty cool.
That's cool.
That's pretty cool.
I got 3 legendary creatures.
Shut the front door, dude. You did not.
I did. Yeah.
You're full of shit, bro.
I'll read the rare.
Okay.
Evelyn the Covetous.
Okay. Coveting?
Evelyn?
Oh, weird.
Yeah. Anyway, so legendary creature, Vampire Rogue, Flash. When Evelyn the Covetous or another vampire enters the battlefield under your control, exile the top card of each player's library with a collection counter on it. I don't know what a collection counter is.
Yeah, me neither.
Once each turn, you may play a card from exile with a collection counter on it if it was exiled by an ability you controlled, and you may spend mana on it as though it were... Whoa.
Is this a paragraph?
Once each turn, you may play a card from exile with a collection counter on it if it was exiled by an ability you controlled, and you may spend mana as though it were any color to cast it. That's actually pretty good.
Yeah, it's good, but boy, Wizards, figure it out, man. Make that shit concise. All right, my turn. This is my last one. You only get to read 2. Also, you got 3, I'm mad. Soul of Emancipation, 4 colorless, 1 forest, 1 plains, 1 island. An Avatar 5/7 creature. When Soul of Emancipation enters the battlefield, destroy up to 3 other target non-land permanents. For each of those permanents, its controller creates a 3/3 white angel creature token with flying. Huh. Okay, it's expensive, but I mean, if you could, the thing is, it's blue. Oh, but it's not an artifact. I was gonna say you could...
It's Bant colors.
Yeah, it's Bant colors, for those of you that played in the Shards of Alara block, which is basically almost the last time that we played. We were there for like Gate Crash and stuff, but...
That was years later.
Years later. And I got another rare, but we're not gonna go over this. Did you want to share a second one?
Nah, I shared the planes.
Okay,
I'll stick with the planes.
All right, well, now that my mouth is all warmed up.
Tip of the tongue. Tip of the tongue.
We should start talking about Liminal RITE. Mm-hmm. And I think the best place to start is to talk about like what the concept of the record is, so that once we get into the lyrics, it kind of makes sense.
Yeah, that's actually a great idea.
I'm going to alt tab to the lyrics. Boom. And you'll be in charge of the mouth.
Sure.
When we get there.
Yeah. So I guess as far as the concept of the album is concerned, it's a very long story to talk about how we got into the idea.
Sure. We can do that another time. And we have some podcasts that go over it too.
We do. You should check out Kardashevband because Kardashevband goes into some of these details as well. But I think the main thing that I wanted to develop when I was writing the lyrics is I wanted to build on the idea of the album sort of like doing something. Remember when we did The Bearing of Shadows, the goal was for that album to sort of like help people find emotional healing in a way.
Yeah.
By sort of breaking them down in a sense and helping them, helping all of us realize that pain is a human experience. And while, many of us may have different types of pain and different things that we go through because of who we are, where we live, where we're born, these sorts of things, that pain would be, we could eventually see that like everybody hurts sometimes, man. Everybody hurts. Exactly. And so I really liked that idea. Although this album was a little bit more, based on some of the things that I struggle with, that I also see society struggling with from time to time. And I guess if you were to like boil down liminal right into its most basic form, into its most basic meaning, it's that it is dangerous to live in and romanticize the past.
Yep.
It is dangerous to live in and romanticize the past. That's the basic purpose of the album, I think, was for me to work through that because I think, thankfully I was lucky enough to have a very good childhood. Yeah. Wasn't perfect, but really there wasn't, that's going to come through.
That's totally on there, dude.
Yeah. It wasn't perfect and, we had some hardships, but overall I have very few complaints, very, very little complaints. And so sometimes, in the modern world, I find myself living in the past a little too much. And it makes it difficult for me to face the struggles of today, somewhat frequently. And it's also made it difficult for me sometimes to have honest views of the past, both my past and like human history past, because my past was so good, all the past must be good, right? And that's something I've really worked on over the past, 5 or 6 years. And the name Liminal Right is essentially a direct reference of how the album ends. I'm going to go ahead and spoil it for you. But
spoilers.
Basically, he gives in. He's the main character of this album. He doesn't give in. He doesn't move away from the past. He doesn't grow through the past. He gets stuck in it, and eventually he burns his childhood home down with him inside of it.
Do you think it would be a succinct way of saying like nostalgia is a slippery slope?
I think it could be.
Like just to summarize sort of the motif that we're getting after.
Yeah, I think it would be. But with the album, I also don't want to villainize nostalgia, right? Because, oftentimes in life, we work in these strong dichotomies where it's like, okay, so nostalgia is bad, no looking back. And I'm like, well, the past is very valuable. We can learn a lot of things. And, if you did have a good thing in your childhood, it's okay to pull that forward and live based on it to some degree. So I think it's just, I think you could say that, but I think it's better to say it's important to navigate our past, present, and future intentionally with a sense of intention and awareness. Right.
Okay.
And in the album, the main character, we just call him the Lost Man. He doesn't have a name, but he's very directly referenced. He's older. We don't know how old. He's suffering from the early signs of dementia, and he is alone. He's depressed. His life is basically pure isolation, and so he goes back to his childhood home, which we don't know where it is. I always imagine it being kind of rural and out in the woods, with like little fields next to it, wherever that would be. And he tries to reclaim his past, but unfortunately, in doing so and moving through room to room and having all these memories, he's also haunted by certain memories he has suppressed, certain memories that he's not entirely sure if they are real. And unfortunately, he is unable to reconcile the guilt that he has over certain things as well as the comparison of how bad his life is now versus how good his life was then. And that together causes him to give up, burn the house down with him in it. And then the album basically ends with the sun rising and hearing we wanted cicadas, but they're actually cricket sounds that we got. Whoops. But you can hear the insects. You can hear, like, you can sort of visualize the sun rising. You can sort of hear, there's no like sound effect, but you can sense like the smoke rising from the rubble of the house. And that's how the album ends. And, I remember I was talking with my mom about this album. She's like, well, that's a really sad ending. And I was like, well, I mean, it wouldn't seem really very dangerous. It wouldn't really, a story with a happy ending does not always drive home the meaning that you're trying to express. And, sometimes it's not about offering a story that makes you feel good or offers closure. It's about offering a story that holds a narrative and holds like a moral of the story type of thing going on. Yeah,
I think of it kind of like with children's tales, with like the Grimm brothers and like Hansel and Gretel as an example. There's like this sort of teaching moment that parents can have by telling these stories, wherein they can sort of warn their children about decision making and like consequences. And there's a name for stories that have that value to them, but I can't think of it right
Parable?
now.
No,
it's possible.
I know what you mean. I don't know what the word is, but I know what you mean.
But yeah, just like a literary tool to warn somebody of the consequences of actions is kind of like a way that I sort of look at this record.
Yeah, I think that's a really good way to look at it.
Yeah.
And so that's the overarching context in which the album takes place. And that's the main thing that I think I wanted to get across, which is also like a message to myself. And to this day, I still find myself doing that sometimes when the world is just too difficult. I'll like zone out and I'm just thinking about like, how awesome it was, like, playing tag with my dad, or even like the mindset, like living in a time where I understand that this is a very privileged place to be. That's my life. That's how I was raised.
Right.
But thinking about a time before I knew what racism was.
Right.
Thinking about a time when I didn't know what like sexual assault was.
Yeah.
I didn't know that was a thing that happened on this earth. And as you get older, you learn these things, and it's sometimes hard to still see the world as a place that holds some beauty in it.
Yeah. A couple of things come to mind. The first one is that old adage, ignorance is bliss, right?
Yeah.
When you don't have an awareness of some horrific thing in the world, the world seems a little bit brighter. And then when you do have it, the world seems a little dimmer, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the other thing that I was thinking of was, nostalgia isn't always bad until you find yourself leveraging it as a form of escapism, in my opinion. I'm not a doctor or anything, but if it's escapism or like a coping mechanism, like if you're going through a really hard time and so you go back to that one video game that gives it to you, that's probably okay. You might need that in that moment. But for me, this record sort of exemplifies the detrimental effects of not auditing your perception of your own past. That's kind of the way that I would word it, I guess.
Yeah, I would say, one thing I would say is I don't necessarily think coping mechanisms and escapism are inherently bad on their own.
Yeah, me neither.
But when used in excess and when they like consume you, then yeah, that's a problem.
Sure.
But I think that's a pretty good context for the album as it stands.
Yeah, so that is the overview of Liminal Right. And now, if you'd like, we can start going deep dives into the lyrics. One thing that we hope to bring you guys today is Mark's intentional writing, and also the things that maybe people have prescribed to it that he didn't intend. But then also, what I think was really fun last time we did this for the previous records was me kind of explaining to you how I've always interpreted it without your explanation.
Yeah, we always did that first. Like we would zero in on a line, and you would tell me what you thought it means.
Yeah, or I would like describe to you the imagery that comes to mind, and you're like, no. In my head, she has red hair, and I'm just like, what? Yeah.
So let's go ahead and talk about the intro.
Sounds good.
Interestingly enough, the album, as well as you know, but as some of you may not know if you haven't heard it, is chopped up by 3 monologues.
That's true.
And those were actually written by Alex, our bassist.
Yep.
So, for these monologues, we're going to be sort of dissecting what we think it means together. And I can talk about how it influenced my writing.
Yeah, that's a good point. Some context here is that Alex approached us with these monologues, and just one of them, I think it was the first one, if I remember correctly. He wrote just one of them and delivered it to us and said, hey guys, I thought this would be like cool poem or lyrics or inspiration or even a monologue we can speak into the album. And we were like, wow, this is really cool.
Yeah.
And so how did that affect the lyrics at this point?
So at this point, not at all, because he wrote these after this first one he wrote after the first couple songs were written lyrically.
Gotcha.
And he had asked me, he's like, Mark, what kind of themes are we looking at? What kind of story are we looking at? And so I gave him the basic premise. So this one, his lyrics are actually to some degree based on, or his monologue is actually to some degree based on the album as it was already written.
Gotcha.
Now, for the viewers, we've got the lyrics there. Unfortunately, we can't remove that highlight, but these lyrics are visible on the Kardashevband.com website.
Yes.
And on that website, there's merch. There's our ETP program, where you can sign up. Well, tell them a little bit about that, Nico.
Sure. So on our website, we have a support program called Enlisted Travelers, and this is a way for people to support us if they really like what we're doing and they want to see us do more of it. Think of it as like a version of Patreon, but you're just directly supporting us to help us do things like this. We've got 50 plus people on there that support us regularly. Some benefits include seeing deep dives like this, watching the videos we make instead of just listening to the audio, and also getting your name printed in all of our booklets. If you look up here, we've got a couple of records that Mark has collected. Each of these records has our Enlisted Traveler lists. So your name gets printed in the book for all of time, going all over the world. It's pretty sweet. So come support us if you can.
Same is true with any collector's editions. My mom and dad have the collector's edition of the Almanac.
Oh,
and it's beautiful.
I haven't seen it yet.
Well, come on over for dinner sometime and check it out.
Okay.
So yeah, these are all on the website if you want to check them out. Probably the best place to read them. Why? Because we say so.
Yeah.
So yeah, let's go ahead. You know what would be a fun thing to do?
Okay.
Let's go ahead and with these monologues, let's just play them in the video.
Okay.
And then people can hear it because they're very easy to hear. And then we can go ahead and talk about them. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's play the monologue right now.
Okay, great.
Fields of gold sway like waves of the ocean. Gentle chimes echo through the air. Their dancing melodies swing with the wind. A unison of wonder from the heavens. Surface level beauty apparent to common eyes. But underneath are my memories. Below the golden breeze, a piece of me remains cold and still. Placed there as a result of my own negligence. I caused us all so much grief, and the guilt consumes me still. I left this place, but you stayed. The further from you I get, the more your face is clouded. I can't see you, and I can't hear your name. I don't want to forget. I don't want you to disappear. I need to return. I need to see you again.
Another cool thing, and that I think is really neat, is that Sean is the narrator. Originally, I was going to be the narrator because being the voice of Kardashev, it just kind of made sense. But my voice didn't really. I only tried one pass at it, and my voice didn't really have the timbre or the tone that I wanted because my voice is a little bit higher, a little bit sing-songy, a little bit bouncy, and Sean did a practice pass just for fun, and it sounded awesome. We were all just like, whoa, this sounds like a barrel-aged whiskey,
Yeah, it did.
And so the narrator, the monologues were written by Alex, narrated by Sean. And so this is the first time I think there are words and lyrics in a Kardashev song that are so collaborative, which I think is really cool. Yeah. So Nico, talk to me about because we just heard the intro play. Talk to me about the thoughts that you get from this, the things that you think and feel, and the images you have from it.
Yeah, great. So the approaching of Atonement is like one of the best songs to get the listener prepared for the sonic landscape. The narration itself is really cool because there's 3 of them that kind of bind the story together, but sonically they're all a little bit different. So with this one, what really happened was I took inspiration from the process we had for the almanac, which is, for those of you that have heard that, prologue also has narration. That is Mark speaking in Alinea.
Yeah.
And then, but the music of it, the music behind that, what that he speaks over, is actually the beginning of Between Sea and Sky, very distant and faded and quiet, and it's just cascading guitars over and over. And it actually has me humming in the background. And it sort of creates this like intentional preparation for what the first song on the record will bring. And the same thing was true here going into Silvered Shadows. The approaching of Atonement was an extension of the beginning of Silvered Shadows. But visually, I mean, I see exactly what's being described. The words are so flowery and beautiful and descriptive that it really brings its own imagery to light.
Yeah, you know, I think when I think of this, I imagine it happening directly at the time when he shows up to the property.
Sure.
You know, and I think he's also seeing it in it's written in present tense, but his romanticism is already showing through, because if we think about it, if the property has been abandoned since, you know, he left, which we don't know how old, mid-teens, early 20s maybe.
Sure.
And now he's older, you know, mid-60s, early 70s, and he's going back to this property. There's no way that the cornfield would be taken care of and be swaying like gold and like looking beautiful. It would look there would be tons of weeds, if it was even there, if it hadn't been, you know, picked over by pests and things.
That's a good point.
But then down there, when he says, I left this place, that makes me think it's very present tense. So it tells me that he's seeing it through these rose-colored glasses as he appears. And at the end, he's talking about the main reason he showed up. You know, I don't want to forget. I don't want you to disappear. I need to return. I need to see you again. So there's a part of him, either illogically, delusionally, or symbolically, that thinks that he has arrived. He sees the property for what it once was, which was a symbolism of safety and security. And unlike most people who right then at that moment would see this building falling apart and toppled over, and would be like, well, I guess I'll take a quick stroll, but this is clearly not the place that it used to be. He's like, cool, I'm here. I'm where I need to be. So the delusion is already running. We're going to see quickly in the next song, it starts to break apart and he starts to try to put it back together. But that's what I see here. I see him like if you had gone with him, let's say that this is a trip, he would say like, it's just as beautiful as I remember. And you'd probably be like,
dude, did you guys have like windows? Like this thing looks like it's gonna, you know, blow 3 tones when a wind comes by. Like this cracks everywhere. Yeah, I see the same thing. It's very dilapidated. I have a question though, unless you're done, and that is, when he says, I don't want you to disappear, does he mean the house? Does he mean some family member he's trying to recollect upon? Who's he referring to as you?
I think he's talking about his family members, and I think he may be, in my mind, in my, you know, head canon.
Yeah.
I imagine him talking mostly about his mom, mostly about his mother. But yeah, I think he's saying, I don't want you to disappear, as in like from my memory, because he also knows that his memory is fading. He knows that his memory is starting to go away. He's aware of these things, and so if I go back to the place where I was born, if I go back to the place of my birth, then, you know, maybe I can hold on to these memories forever so that you continue to be real.
Yeah. So if he surrounds himself with the things he thinks he's forgetting, he won't forget them.
Correct.
Gotcha. And that's part of the delusional part, is because when he gets there, he's convinced that it's still as it was. And you already know you're in for a trip because he's like that far in.
Yeah. Now, there are a couple things here that are interesting that did influence my writing. You know, he says, I caused us all so much grief and the guilt consumes me still.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure, if I remember correctly, which it's rare that I remember correctly, but I'm pretty sure that I had not written Compost Grave Song at that time.
Okay.
Lyrically, whenever I say I had written, it's just lyrics. But at that time I was like, well, what would that grief be? And we'll get to that when we talk about Compost Grave Song, which is quite a few videos away.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's what I think. And I think it's really poignantly written. I think it's quite good. And you're right. I think it sets up not just the sonic landscape, but also like the emotional landscape for what this album is going to be, which is beautiful, but ultimately tragic.
Yeah. One thing that I think was really kismet, I'm going to use this word, is that Alex, without ever kind of revealing it to us, is kind of poetically on the same page as we are in what we want to bring to the table with the record. This poem, this monologue, is mostly unedited by anyone, right? This is kind of from page to recording.
Mm-hmm.
Not many of us went in there and like said like, oh, this sounds good, but let's change it, which happens a lot in the writing process, especially with the music. But with this, he kind of delivered it and we were all like, wow.
The only thing that happened that I remember is I just made a couple of suggestions on like synonyms, so words were a little less repetitive, and then
maybe tense arguments.
Yeah, like past tense and present tense being conflicting, which is really common for a first draft. But as far as like the overall composition, yeah, what you see here is probably 90% original text.
Yeah, and I just want to shout out, Alex, great job, man. Like, fuck, it's so cool that you just had this.
Good writer.
You were just ready to give this. So you guys just listened to that. So let's see how that transitions into Silvered Shadows.
Let's do it. So here we have Silvered Shadows.
Yeah.
Here we have Silvered Shadows, and y'all just heard a clip from that song. And I think I wrote all of these songs lyrically in order, to the best of my recollection. I wrote all these songs in order, and this was actually a really difficult song to write. But Nico, I liked how we did this last time, where you would read a stanza, interpret it, and then ask me about it. So why don't you read us the beginning there, starting at coin and probably ending at apron, which you'll have to scroll a little bit for.
For over here? Yeah, I got you. Okay, here we go. So we've got coin of pure gold in green oceans, or a setting sun sinking into open hands. Tucked away there where I've hidden my treasures, one hidden note in the loose earth with a map to the things that I've found, drawn by hand, tied together with cloth torn from her apron. With this, the imagery is so obvious because you actually reference objects. Oftentimes in our lyrics, you'll not directly say, like, in some instances, you'll kind of leave it to the interpretation of the person when you're being more, what's the word in poetry when you don't say the exact thing, you kind of infer to it with other things?
I know what you...
metaphor? Is it like a metaphor?
Metaphor, allusions, similes. Yeah.
You use a narrative device to sort of imply something. Whereas like with the almanac, you would say something like, what's that tree? There's a genus of tree that fell over that the fawn, that Kent was behind, or not Kent, but the viewer.
Oh, it's in the lyrics.
Yeah.
I don't remember.
Okay, let's back up.
No, it's okay. It's okay. We don't remember.
Okay, fuck it, dude. We don't remember. But sometimes you're literal. And in this case here, I think there's a lot of literal that can also be taken as figurative. When you say coin of pure gold is it green oceans?
Yeah, green oceans. Yeah.
So a coin of pure gold in green oceans. That could be very literal, as like maybe someone tossed a coin into a well, and so they're watching a coin float into the bottom of a well. So like maybe it's a hopeful song, but it could also be or not allegory, but metaphor, in that it's the sun setting behind a body of water, right? So the emerald water and the sun is a gold object that's a coin or circle.
Yeah.
So there's a lot that can be implied here. So when I'm reading through this and I'm listening along, and the music just kind of has its floaty nature that it does, I see a narrative playing out in front of me where you're describing a setting, you're describing characters, you're bringing, you mention in here, where I've hidden all my treasures, one hidden note in the loose earth. Like I think of like a little kid who like drew a little map and like put it in a little safe like spot in the yard. But then in the loose earth with a map to the things that I've found. So as if they were like, oh, in the sandbox in the corner, I put that nickel, or whatever, kind of like a little trinket. So I see a very literal scene, but I like to think about it figuratively as well. So tell me, what is this actually talking about, or what were your intentions?
I mean, you've got the basic right idea. So at this point, he walks out into the cornfield. That's the first place he goes in our narrative. And the coin of pure gold in green oceans, or a setting sun sinking into open hands, is a tie between holding like a cool coin, right? Because this stanza or paragraph or whatever is talking about like how I did this a lot as a kid. Maybe you did this, but you had like little treasure boxes.
Yo, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, you've told me about your treasure boxes.
Don't get me into it right now.
Yeah, you've told me about your treasure boxes. I remember that now. But like I had little treasure boxes with just cool stuff. So, it could be a chromie.
Shut up. Don't, dude. You can't do this to me.
I didn't call them chromies, but we'll talk about that another time.
Yeah, another time.
But like just stuff like that.
It's trash, but to kids, it's treasure.
It's treasure, right? So it might be like a little coin from like a chocolate coin wrapper or something like that. So it's talking literally about that in this little box that was like buried beside a tree or something. But it's also tying to the sun setting behind the cornfield.
Oh, it's the cornfield.
Yeah, fields of gold swaying like a.
Oh, it goes back to the monologue.
Exactly.
Whoa.
Yeah, and I do a lot of that tie-in, but that was Alex's tie-in. Because this song was already written, so he did that. So I got to give him credit for that one.
Okay.
But so the sun sets behind imagine your eyes, like the kid is holding this coin in their hands, right? Imagine the sun setting behind the swaying cornfield with like the green and like the gold corn silk coming out, right?
Oh,
and then your eyes follow the sun setting, and then the coin is in your hand.
Okay.
Right. So it's kind of like a symbolic way of showing his sense of connection and possibly possession of the physical location.
Okay.
The sun sets into his hands. He puts it in a little box and buries it.
Wow.
Because it's something special, right?
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, but please go ahead.
What I was going to say was this kind of almost reminds me of like an allusion to like mythology, wherein like that could be like a sun god putting the sun away for the day and like tucking it away, but they're a playful little kid, so it's kind of.
Well, there's a lot of that to Chapter of Atlas, which, as you know, I'm going to pick up writing again once we get a little bit farther in the upcoming album. There's a lot of sun and moon mythological imagery, so maybe I pulled from that. But one thing you nailed was the little map where he's hid stuff around. So like it's not just one box of treasure. Like he's got like, maybe his dad went into town and bought him some like brass jacks. Remember like
right.
I don't know if kids play with jacks anymore. They were outdated when we were kids.
Yeah.
But like maybe he has those. So in that one little box that's like hidden in the cornfield by a tree or something, he's like, okay, so if I want the jacks, they are under the east side of the house board that's loose. You know what I mean? Something like that.
Oh, we have to think of our target audience here. If you're older than a certain age, it's jacks. If you're our age, it's pogs. If you're younger than us,
Beyblades, probably.
Beyblades, sure. Oh, fidget spinners.
Fidget spinners, yeah.
There you go. See, everybody can relate now.
Things like that, yeah. Things like that. And then the last line tied together with cloth torn from her apron. I just wanted the whole album to feel kind of down home, kind of rural, because one thing that, I don't have like the science or the data to back it up, but I think that, in rural communities, as was described by my mother growing up, close-knit families, and not necessarily just rural white families, but like, rural communities where it's not so much city, you have to depend on the people around you and the people close to you a little bit more. So like, rather than being like, oh, I'll just go to the store and get some string. It's like, well, we go into town on Sundays.
Right.
That's when we go into town, and I want to do this. And so I'm going to be a bad little kid, and I'm going to tear a little strip of cloth from mom's apron.
Or maybe we don't have the extra money for these types of amenities.
Exactly.
I think the word humble comes to mind.
Yeah, I want it to be very humble and very like close knit in that. And that's not to say like city families aren't as close knit, but I think if you took like a survey of like families that were like very metropolitan, middle class versus like, a bunch of families of all different cultures on like farms and in smaller cities, you'd find a certain level of dependence on each other that maybe you wouldn't find in a city.
Our Gallup poll today is about whether or not you can afford string. We think that the bell curve will show the majority probably could, but maybe not.
Yeah, I like that, I guess. I don't know.
Thanks. I don't know. Little aside. Thank you, our sponsor, Gallup Polls. Yeah, so it's kind of like these humble beginnings. There's a lot of association, but here's an interesting element that I'm gonna actually pull out of this, which is this is like the first indication of the pronoun her. There's something beyond just the narrator now. There's an association, and maybe the prologue had it, or sorry, the monologue from the opening track. Maybe there was an inference there as well, but this is the first thing where we're getting a glimpse into who's going to be part of this album, and I think is that going to be his mother.
Yeah, so it's definitely his mother, but it could be, it's pretty clear later that it's mother, but you at this point in the album, if you're reading the lyrics along and just kind of going with it, you could be like, oh, it could be a sister, it could be an aunt, something like that.
Some matriarchal value in his life. Okay, well, let's move on to the next bit here. This is quite a short stanza, but we're entering that wildly poetic section of Mark's brain, wherein we get this like middle English, just the letter O. Oh, crack in a mirror, a penumbra blinding, pulled back to what was, and weakness in clouded eyes. There's so much here that goes back to things you've written in the past. The, I was a pilgrim. You've got the penumbra, which comes directly out of Peripety lyrics. Weakness, clouded eyes, I think is also from a Peripety, or maybe Iota.
Clouded eyes, I talk, so I shall let the scales fall from my eyes, for hearing this light I am speechless. Is
that continuum? For hearing this light I am speechless.
It's
Consium.
Consium.
And then it goes right down.
Yeah. It's Consium. There are certain images that I really like to use when writing. And a lot of them come from sort of the biblical understanding of the world I had growing up. Obviously, as you know, and as most people know, I'm not a Christian now. But, the way we're raised, colors and peppers the way that we think in many ways.
Sure.
And, we were growing up, we talked a lot about parables and symbols and things like this represents this represents that. And so some of those stuck with me, and mirrors and dark glass and fog and like blindness.
Yeah, things over the eyes. You talk about the eyes a lot.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of symbolism in the Bible of like covered eyes and things like that.
Oh yeah. Even like justice is blind. Angels maybe had like a thing to not be judgmental. I don't know.
Not that I'm aware of on the angels, but you've got the right idea.
I clearly went to church.
You've got the right idea, right? You've got the right idea.
Yeah.
So the verse that I was thinking of is 1 Corinthians 13:12. I don't remember the context of that verse because, like I said, it's been a long time. But I remember it's like, I think it's an apostle writing to somebody, and he's writing to them, and he's saying, but now we see through a glass darkly, and then it goes on from there. But basically, that was like my parents. They had a band. They wrote an album, and they kind of worked that lyric or that verse into a lyric where it's but now we see through a glass. But now we see through a glass dimly, and we touch only by the embrace of faith. And so that's an image that stuck with me. Now, this section isn't making any sort of biblical allusions or anything like that, but that's where I got the symbolism from. And so here it's kind of loosely talking about like he has gotten up, he's walked towards the house, and the maybe he sees a mirror, or maybe the mirror represents his mind. Not really sure. But that crack in a mirror is more poetic, and it's representing how he briefly is brought back to reality.
Oh.
Like, so he has a moment of clarity, a moment of lucidity.
Yeah.
Where he's like, okay, I'm actually seeing this situation for what it is, and this is terrible. Mm-hmm. And then weakness in clouded eyes, that's both literal, like maybe he's got some cataracts developing, right? Maybe he's got some cataracts developing, and then also figurative because he's not looking at the past clearly. And then I'll just save you some time on the next one. Torn from the dirt, the willow tree I once knew. That tree where his little box was hidden is gone now.
Oh.
And this is a pull from my mom's history, because she grew up in kind of a rough environment. Her dad was a little bit abusive, and sometimes as a place of refuge, she would hide underneath a willow tree that they had.
Wow.
in the front yard of their house in Michigan. She would hide underneath this willow tree, and when it would rain, there would be it was like a very like typical like weeping willow, with the strands going all the way down, and she would feel safe there, and like the little beads of little beads of water would look like little gems, and so she was like an ice queen or something.
Okay.
Things like that. Yeah. So, and then I can save you some time on the next part here as well.
Sure, go
because
ahead.
it's literally just him internally or externally crying out for the people that he misses: brother, sister, mother, father.
Yeah, and the delivery that you do on this is really cool. It's kind of that pained in the background, sort of like what's the lyric from the almanac? It's I was a pilgrim.
Yeah.
Funny enough, here's a little fun fact for you guys. When we're writing Mark's style and his approach to the musicality, we will suggest to one another, should I do this in my pilgrim voice? And
Yeah.
that's where we get that from.
Yeah. Should I do pilgrims? Yeah.
Yeah, should we do pilgrims here?
Yeah,
Dude,
totally.
it's one of the best. So then you go on and you say here, nights are getting longer now. In time, I'll be too old. Is this another moment of clarity?
You know, this line is a little bit out of place because we actually, in the process of recording, both were like, this part needs something. I was just going to be quiet. And we were like, this part needs something. We need some lyrics here. So this was actually just patched in the moment while I was at the mic.
I do. Yeah, I remember we do that. You know, sometimes when we're listening to it, and it's like, man, I feel like this riff it doesn't have the right moment by itself. It needs some help delivering the emotion. So yeah, I didn't remember that, but that's cool that you remember that.
Yeah. And so like when that happens, I just say to myself, you know, what can I write here? Because obviously, you know, for me, like lyrics are something that I have to really, they're kind of tough for me to write. I think I do a good job, but like I can't just, you know, be like in a coffee shop and write something down on a napkin and then it's like, oh, that's great. Like I have to turn off the lights. My wife has to go to bed. I have to isolate myself kind of in the dark.
It's the middle of the day. Go to bed. I gotta write.
Get out of here. But I need a very private, distraction-free space, and so I'm not going to be able to get like as intertwiney as I'm not going to be able to weave anything like I normally like to. So I just say, what's something that's in the right key, right?
Yeah.
You know, what's something that's going to fit, and then people can just kind of decide what it means. If you look at that line, it doesn't really make sense. Nights are getting longer now. In time, I'll be too old. He's already old. We could say that represents him still holding on to that inner child a little too much.
Wow.
He doesn't see himself as the old man he actually is. Possibly that's what that could mean, but
That's cool.
That's an up for your interpretation line.
Yeah, I also really like the delivery here because you have this like soft spoken style singing. So getting longer now, and you kind of like follow the music and like deliver it that way. I think that's really awesome. So the next section here is now nothing is familiar. The shadow is blinding. There's blinding again. This face and these hands, dead trees and dead soil. I mean, this seems like he's comparing himself as like this old dying thing to the world around him, which maybe now he's lucid again, which is old and dying.
Yeah, and you're right. This is a moment of very strong lucidity. Like he's snapped out of that illusion that he saw in the opening
of
monologue,
Atonement.
Approaching of Atonement. Yes, he has snapped out of that, and so he's like, I imagine that at this point the sun has set, so it's dark. He can't really recognize anything, partially because it's dark, but partially because he's seeing reality for what it is, and it's his home is an abandoned hovel at this point.
Yeah.
Like, I want you to think about an abandoned house that like the ceiling is kind of caving in one spot, and it's like the floorboards are buckled because they're kind of moldy. Like that's the situation of his home, and he sees that, and he looks at his hands and he looks at the tree, and he's just realizing he is as lost and far gone and dying as this property is, which is an interesting thing to think about because we don't know why, but the property was abandoned. It wasn't sold.
Right.
So we'll talk more about him leaving, but his family left. His family left the property. We never know. I don't know why. And
I can infer why, but yeah, you never explicitly say.
yeah, maybe the realization of what happened is too much. It's possible. That's a good reason. And so the house has been abandoned, and in a way, he's like, I'm just putting this together now.
Yeah.
I'm pontificating. But he is also kind of abandoned himself, right? He's given up on himself. He makes no effort to make the present day good because the past was good, and facing the present day is scary and difficult. So
He's a silvered shadow of what he once was.
yes, and that's actually coming up next.
Okay, so let's scroll a little bit here.
Yeah.
So next you go on, and I feel like this is kind of the chorus, especially because it's repeated, but it's over the like biggest, most open section of the song where you say, "I pulled the golden corn silk from my hair. Handmade curtains drew me home. I am a silvered shadow of old air where I lived, now overgrown." So much of that is very literal, and it's very demonstrative. Is that the word where you like?
I think so.
Yeah, or descriptive. But I can see him doing all of these things, except for the part where he says, "I am a silvered shadow of old air." So tell me a little bit about this stanza.
Yeah. So, I mean, my back is so tight right now. I'll start with the beginning. Pulling the corn silk from his hair. That's like if you like imagine watching a movie and you see like a flashback happening really quickly with like modern times. So like a kid is like playing and happy and like comes out of the cornfield and they've got some corn silk in their hair and they pull it out.
Oh, okay.
But then right after that, an old man looking depressed and downtrodden like pulls it out of his hair and like remembers the moment that we just saw and drops it on the ground. That's kind of what's happening here. And the handmade curtains drew me home. Like I wanted the curtain because originally we had this idea of ropography.
Yeah.
Which was inspired by a video by Adam Geller.
Jacob Geller.
Jacob Geller. The Beauty in Everyday Things or something like that.
Yeah.
We'll link it.
It's on the website.
It's on the website. And so the handmade curtain, because like I remember being young and I remember certain things around the house just giving me comfort. Just seeing them brought me comfort just because they were familiar. One of which is my grandma's quilt, who's in, our soon-to-be-born son's crib, just in the other room.
Right, and to go back to an older album, when you talk about it with Patterson, when you guys go back and forth, the warmth of the sun on our carpet or whatever you say.
Yes, there. Exactly. Like the warmth of the sun on the carpet. Actually, let me show the quilt because this is a good illustration. You
guys getting this? This is some behind-the-scenes shit. I need you to go on, open new tab, twitter.com, get the link for this podcast, send it. Get the link for this video, send it. Tell them to listen, tell them to watch.
So my grandma, actually, let's turn this off.
Yeah, let's hide that.
I'm not going to be able to show it in its entirety, but my grandma actually made this quilt. And the funny thing, short story, my grandma made this quilt, and it's a very interesting story. But when I was younger, I would look at this quilt because I never met my grandmother. I would look at this quilt and I would imagine her making it, and it would make me feel like she was kind of close.
Wow.
Right? And so I would look at this and think about like, well, what was she thinking about when she did this? And, she's so good at making bunnies, although looking back, this guy looks a little weird, right? And so it's all these bunnies like doing things. And let me this side.
So in a way, does this kind of represent grandma to you? Besides pictures, but like this is the physical thing that carried forward?
I wouldn't say that it represents my grandma, Irma Lee, but I think that it's pulled from the fact that I was very attached to family items growing up. Because so the story behind that quilt is essentially that my mom and dad were told that they couldn't have any more children. Like there were no more kids available. And actually what had happened is my dad had a vasectomy. And I've done the 23andMe. He's my dad.
Here we go.
It was like a 99.9% match for anybody who's curious. So
you're saying there's a chance.
But then my grandma, like literally on her deathbed, was like, and of course my grandmother being, a very strong Christian woman was like, I've had a vision that you're gonna have a blonde-haired, blue-eyed little boy.
No way.
Well, I think that was probably very important to her. I think that genetically, that's a pretty safe guess.
Yeah, that's a good point. Okay, that's a good point. Like between your mom and dad, yeah, that is a safe guess.
Two blue-eyed white people giving birth to a blue-eyed baby, and you've got not a 50-50 chance. We got a high chance it's going to be a male.
Yeah.
But I never when that story is retold, I'm always just like, wow, because I don't want to, I don't want to take away from that story.
This tangent is great.
But it's a quilt that even though I disagree that she actually had a vision or anything, it is like kind of like, I think a lot of families have like their like mythoses. Like,
sure.
Some families they're like, Uncle Terry and all those wild stories, right?
Uncle Terry.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And he had some wild stories, and some of the stories that your mom has told you, maybe they're not quite accurate.
They might be stretched a little. Tall tales.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so I think handmade curtains, like, this kid walking out from the cornfield, seeing the handmade curtain, that would like really reinforce this idea of home.
Yeah.
Close, comfort. Now that curtain's probably gone, but maybe he envisions it. And then this idea, I am a silvered shadow of old air, basically like he feels like nothing. He feels old. He feels frail. He feels his mind slipping away, basically like getting blown away.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And silver, because his hair is gone gray.
Yeah.
Right. So I'm a silvered shadow of old hair.
More like a silver fox, dude.
Well, this guy, I don't imagine him having taken very good care of himself.
No. He's definitely not doing well.
No.
I wanted to point something out though. Handmade curtains drew me home. We're going back to like that humble beginnings thing, where it's like even the curtains had to be made by hand because we couldn't afford them.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. Homemade things.
Yes.
And I remember when I was thinking about this. Now, I'm not one to like be like, fuck modernity. Modernity is terrible. But sometimes, like when I'm on TikTok, I mean, okay, I clearly can't be anti-modernity when I'm like on TikTok. And I think, people criticize TikTok. I think TikTok's awesome.
Dude, TikTok's so sick.
I think I've learned so many amazing things on TikTok.
TikTok's great. I'm toxic. That's what I'm learning.
Yeah, exactly. Me too. But, oftentimes I'll see TikToks where people are building an aesthetic and I look at it and I'm like, this home is beautiful. This home is gorgeous.
Yeah.
This home is telling absolutely zero stories.
Wow.
And there is no history in it whatsoever. Now, I'm not making a comparison saying that that's bad because some people just don't value that stuff and that's okay. Or, maybe somebody had a situation where they don't have a lot of family heirlooms and things like that. But I know that me personally, there is no way I would ever replace that quilt with something that pulls the room together more. It would never happen. You know what I mean? And so like, I remember thinking about that when I was doing this. I was like, obviously, I don't think I had TikTok at the time of writing these lyrics.
No, probably not.
That was still a thing, like homes that are like you walk into somebody's home and it's beautiful and it's not a judgment, but you feel kind of like you're at IKEA or Crate and Barrel or Bed Bath and Beyond. You're like, oh yeah, I feel like a customer service worker is going to walk up and be like, finding everything okay?
Yeah, live, laugh, and spend money. No offense to those people, but like it can feel that way.
Yeah, and so I think that, that's kind of another reason I wanted to specifically say that it was handmade and show the value of somebody valuing their family member's hard work. But like, listen, if you don't care about your mom's curtains and you bought some awesome curtains that pull your room together, I think that's great. I'm not against it.
But for the story we're telling, you're focusing on these aspects.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yep.
No, I get that. So let's, do we have to scroll? Let's bring the lyrics back up really quick. So the next bit here, you say, torn from the dirt, the man that I was, faded thought, lost my name to your ghost. Now, I think these are, I read this back to back, but they may intentionally be separated.
Oh.
Uh-oh.
Sorry.
Keep going.
Yeah, we're there.
No.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Just a little more. Because it's the short lines. We already did the chorus.
Oh, there we go. Okay.
There we go. Boom. Okay, now you're going too far. Seriously, scroll up.
Hi, everybody. I'm dumb.
God. All right, a little bit down. Start from torn from right there. All right, we're good. Please don't touch it anymore. You're doing it to mess with me now. I know it.
I'm not.
Okay, let's try this again.
No, just keep it.
Okay.
Let people see the struggle. That's what I do in my reaction videos. I'm like, oh, I messed that up. Let's go.
Okay, so let's talk about these two bits here. I feel like these were more add-ins again. Were they or no?
Torn from no. So I got to move it again. So torn from the dirt, the man that I was is a replay of torn from the dirt, the willow tree I once knew.
Why never even knew that?
Yeah. So basically, as his home has fallen apart.
That's good. Stop.
As his home has fallen apart, he is fallen apart because he is his past to an unhealthy degree.
Wow.
Yeah. So, it's kind of like, and it's another thing as well. Like, as much as I am in love with like family heirlooms and the things that we have, like at the end of the day, if that quilt was lost in a fire, like I could still go on.
Right.
I would be very sad and I would be aware that something very important was lost. But at the same time, like, I don't know, give me a week and I'd probably be fine. Like, if I'm being honest, right?
Right.
Whereas, for him, such is not the case. And then faded thought, lost my name to your ghost. Faded thought it's nothing really fancy there. He's just starting to lose his memory. And then lost my name to your ghost. So a name is a very like identifying thing. And we don't ever use his name. I don't even have an idea of what his name would be.
I do.
What was his name be?
No, mine's like a deep dive canon deep cut that you'll never go for, and it's fine.
Oh no, the traveler. Yeah. No, sorry.
Here's the thing. Just hear me out. Really, I'm taking the microphone up so I can say it. He disapproves, but listen. What if this was the traveler from the almanac way in the future, now dealing with his like human experience, human molded mind on Earth. That's all I'm saying, man. It could be fucking sick.
But
I don't care. I just don't tear it apart.
multitudes of life makes that not possible. Because he talks about the place of his birth being on the station, the space station.
That's fine. He could have had a great life here. He could have been in his mid-30s when all this took place.
No.
See, fuck.
It's just not. It's just.
That's fine. I'm stupid, but I like it. I'm a dummy, but I think it's cool.
This is the Nick Learnware show.
Shout out to Nick.
Yo, that's a deep cut. And then so a name is a very identifying thing, and he is so focused on the ghost of his past that he has lost his identity. He's so stuck in the past that he doesn't exist anymore, right? You know, I've met people like that before. I've met people who like, and I think this is probably a feeling that maybe you've had. You meet an old friend, and it's awesome, but then you realize if you're not talking about the high school glory days, you're not really talking about anything.
Yes.
And
I know what you mean.
It's in those moments that you realize, like, you know, hey, I'm really glad we met, but we can't really like have a relationship now.
Right.
Because we're two different people. And so imagine having that, but rather than like with a friend, we're like, hey, maybe you could find a modern hobby. Maybe you could find something. And so you're not, whenever you get together, only talking about the past. You have that with the past in your own mind that is never going to adapt because you're constantly convoluting it.
Wow. That's a vicious cycle.
It is.
Goodness.
And, you know,
this guy's done, dude.
Well, I deal with a lot of like obsession, a lot of obsession and a lot of rumination and things like that. And I can get stuck in cycles of thought that I don't really realize until I'm like, Jesus Christ, it's been 3 hours. You know what I mean? And so I think that's kind of what inspired that.
Okay. Are you ready for this question?
Yeah.
Could you foresee this being you?
Definitely. Yeah.
What?
Yeah. Like I think in a way, like I didn't have this goal when I was reading or writing these lyrics, but like, I think that had I not, you know, I talk about this sometimes with a bit of regret, but had I not like dropped out of school, moved back to Phoenix, pursued music, and gotten myself out of that really depressive cycle I was in, totally.
Wow.
Yeah, I think that, you know, because that was when I was in college. College was a really rough time for me, and that was my comfort was really either my comfort was either video games, which I had like almost no access to, thinking about the past and just feeling like this sense of heartache. Stupid. This sense of heartache for the past, or like doing like pagan stuff. Because I used to be very into like Wicca and all that stuff. Off and on in my life. I don't know. Maybe I'll be back there again someday. Who's to say? I don't know.
I think that would be a great podcast topic for you to solo on.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
My experience with neo-paganism.
Is that a little bit of Max?
That was a little bit of Max.
Whoa, Max, where you been, man?
He's already gone. You made him shy.
Oh, that's too bad.
I used to do this voice that was Max. And it was very fun and awkward. But the short version of like that podcast, my experience with neo-paganism would be this. I don't think any is real, but it's awesome. And if I had to be part of a religion again, it'd be that one.
Yo, Beltane though?
Beltane's dope.
Okay.
Beltane's awesome.
Yeah, no doubt.
Have I jumped over mostly naked with a bunch of other mostly naked people, bonfires in the woods, drinking too much alcohol? Absolutely, I have.
There it is.
And it was amazing.
All right, we're going to use that as the clip for the Instagram promo.
Good.
All right. Okay, so I mean, Faded Thought, Lost My Name to Your Ghost. You just summed that up for us, and then we revisit the chorus here, which I don't think you changed anything of it.
No, I didn't change anything. But this is actually where you, and I think Alex, but for sure you, made a really cool editing choice that I think really added to the lyrics, where my voice, the song gets kind of stretched and pulled, and then you just have my screams, like the pilgrim screams, just kind of echoing back and forth and slowly fading away and disappearing. And I think that that's a really cool choice. I don't know if you did it for this reason or you were just thinking sonically, but to me, it sounds like I think about him like falling back into his delusion. Like he's had some clarity, but the clarity was too hard. The clarity was too difficult. And so we just hear him falling down the well, the oubliette.
The oubliette.
Of his self-imposed prison. Oh, we're getting weird.
It's happening, dude.
The oubliette of his self-imposed prison of this delusion, and he's lost.
Yeah, and I'm not going to get into the compositional choices in this talk because we're going to focus on lyrics. But to me, the way that we produced this part, these lyrics, in that they're like falling into the reverb and they're kind of getting echoey and everything is becoming discordant. I very much see the vortex into hell and Dante falling down through the middle.
I think that's a really.
This is the descent. This is where it's like, we have set the scene now, because that's basically what this did. You talk about he's arrived back to the location. Mm-hmm. Here's the state of mind. Here are his intentions. Here's what he hopes to gain. What he remembers, what he doesn't remember. And then at the end of that song, we're gonna fall into chaos and reveal the truth. And that is how I set this up.
I think that's great, and that's a really good allusion to Beyond the Passage of Embers.
Oh, absolutely.
Because, well, I'll get that. I think is my favorite song lyrically, so we'll save that. But I think that's an hour and 10 minutes. I think that's pretty good.
Yeah, this is a great stopping point for video one. It's 11 tracks. We got 2 out of the way today.
Well, we've got one monologue. Dissever is just an instrumental. So yeah, I think we'll probably have to do like 2 tracks per video, or like a monologue and a track per video.
Yeah,
but yeah, true. if you enjoyed this, if you thought it was fun, let us know in any way that you wish. Interacting with the video is the best way, but you can also let us know in the Kardashev Discord server. If you're on the Kardabox Discord server, you can let me know there.
Yep.
And then check out the website. The website is cool. I had very little, I would say 0, to do with the building of it, but it's really been built and catered around providing you, the fan, the listener, with as much information in as accessible of a way to really get the most out of the music. I think that's the coolest thing about the way that you've built it, is like you get there and it's for the listener. You get there and you can see like, oh, this is where I can learn more about the lore. Oh, this is where I can learn more about like the thought process. Oh, this is where I can see, all of Nico's like crazy but pretty cool like merch designs. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's a cool website. Check it out. And that's all I have.
Yeah, that's all we got. So support however you can. Rate this if you're listening to it. Thanks for the thumbs up and the share. We appreciate you guys. We'll see you for the next video. Bye.
See ya.